Hey everyone, welcome back to True Crime with Tiff Klein, giving criminals the disrespect they deserve. This is episode 2 of season 2, and I want to thank you all for tuning back in. Tonight, I'm going to talk about a case of Tiffany Valiante. You may have heard of her from Unsolved Mysteries and some other podcasts like Kendall Ray. Tiffany Valiante died on July 12th, 2015, and there is a big story behind it because her parents think it was a homicide, but the law determined it a suicide. And I think after you listen to my podcast, it's going to be really hard not to think it was a homicide. I mean, that's where I think it is. But yeah, so it's about Tiffany Valiante. She was an 18-year-old athlete and recent high school graduate from Mays Landing, New Jersey. So we'll get into that in a second. But again, I want to thank you all for tuning in and letting me start my second season again with episode 2 about Tiffany Valiante. So my Facebook has grown, my TikTok has grown, my podcast has grown, which is awesome, and I love you guys for it. I currently just won an award for Scranton, PA, best social media page. I didn't even know I was nominated. I've won a few times in the past, but it's been a while. And then people are nominating me for best social media page and best podcast for the Times Leader of Wilkes-Barre for best or for True Crime with Tiff clients. If you guys want to log on, it's the Times Leader in Wilkes-Barre, the best of the best 2026. And if you go under the media column, you'll see best social media page and best podcast. If you guys want to nominate me, True Crime with Tiff Klein, that'd be awesome. Nominations end on January 16th, and then the real voting begins for those finalists on February 9th, I believe. That'd be really cool. All the support helps. So again, that's the timesleader.com. It's based out of Wilkes-Barre, PA. And it's the best of the best. I am officially part of the Gabby Petito Foundation, which most of you have known that for a while, but I am a volunteer, and I have had a issue here in Pennsylvania with my PFA getting violated, and nobody is listening. Nobody's taking me seriously, and I've reached out to police departments. I've reached out to district attorneys. I've reached out to judge assistants and left messages. I've emailed, and that was Sunday. And today's Thursday, and I have yet to get a response, except one where the chief of police yelled at me for publicly naming one of his police stations online for not getting back to me. And that's all he cared about. All he cared about was his police department online, until I told him that his sergeant told me to go to his police station, which was where I filed a report on Friday. But yeah, so I'm dealing with that in Pennsylvania right now. But victory for Pennsylvania. We just got a law passed by Governor Josh Shapiro for unemployment benefits for women, and I assume men, who are victims of abuse and have to leave their job or relocate. So that's a victory in PA, but I'm working, trying to get a hold of the governor, the state reps, the legislators, the senators to, get more help getting PFAs here. A lot of people get them turned down, and a lot of the violations get ignored, and then it leads to worse things. And I understand giving benefits to those who need to leave, but what are we doing to protect them so it doesn't get to that point where they have to leave? So that's what I'm trying to work on. I saw the Gabby Petito Foundation is working with Gabby's Act right now in Indiana. They're trying to get that law passed for the death lethality assessment program, because Jim Schmidt is a first responder, and he's going around training first responders on these signs of domestic violence. So I've been tagging our PA office holders in all these posts. And now that Savannah's law got passed in Tennessee, where repeating abusers have to register in the system like sex offenders, and I'd love to see that for Pennsylvania. So as a survivor and somebody who's dealing with the courts not taking PFA violations seriously, and all the women and men out there who deal with this, I want to see some change. So my plan is to get letters to all these people and try to make a change. But I just wanted to address that. In the meantime, if you need help, please go to 1-888-799-SAFE. That's the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Or you could visit the GabbyPetitoFoundation.org to find resources. They can't help you directly, but they do have resources on their website that can help you find what you need and who you need to talk to. So make sure you check that out. There's a lot of things going on in the true crime world lately. I see John Ramsey's threatening Paramount for that new show that's supposed to be coming out, saying they better not be accusing Burke as as the suspect. He's threatening to sue if they are. I mean, we have to remember Burke already sued CBS for that documentary they did in 2016, I think for like $700 million for slander and defamation. So, I mean, they're going to sue again. So I don't know if that show's going to launch or not. I don't know what's going on. I know Melissa McCarthy was supposed to be in it playing Patsy from what I remember. And there's some new documentaries going on, and the ISIS event going on where that woman got shot, and everybody's up in arms because some are saying she deserved it and others saying she didn't. I mean, nobody deserves to lose their life. And Just in the Nick of Crime had posted multiple angles. I mean, take it for what you want. I've watched it, and I don't know the whole story. I wasn't there. So just watch it and come up with your own opinion. And there's just so much. I mean, there's so much going on that I can't even think right now about what's going on in the true crime world. There's no recent updates on April Kepner. April Kepner, oh my God. You can tell I watch Grey's Anatomy. Anna Kepner, my bad, my apologies to the family. Anna Kepner, I haven't really seen anything lately on that case. I know a lot of people were diving into that. I know there's a 3-part docuseries coming out on Natalie Holloway and Netflix. They haven't announced the days yet, but I'm looking forward to that because I always dug into that case. So I saw today that Chris Watts is turning to Christianity because of Nancy Grace. And I'm like, man, the power that woman has. He's so full of shit, though. Like, he's so full of shit. And I don't know if you guys get sponsored ads. I had something come up last night on my Facebook. And I don't know if you guys have seen those kind patches. They're supposed to help you lose weight and give you energy and all that good stuff. There's one, and I posted it on my Facebook page if you guys go to it. There's one, and the caption that they put on the girl that filmed it put this caption on it, and it kind of like basically covers her mouth. It looks like Casey Anthony. And I'm like, in all the comments, I'm like, Casey Anthony, is that you? And like nobody else seemed to like question it. I would hope that a company would not have her endorse a product, but I mean, it looks like her. Could be a doppelganger. So if you guys look that up, if you want to go to my Facebook page, it's there. I might just scroll down a little bit. I do post a lot. Sorry, not sorry. But I think it looks like her. Just saying. I think that'd be really fucked up, though, to have her endorse something. If it is her, maybe it's not. But I was like, ma'am, you are not kind. So that was what I had seen. What else is going on? My spirit animal, let me tell you, is Mandy Matney from the Murdoch Family Murders podcast, and the producer and helper of the Hulu docuseries or show Murdoch: A Death in the Family. I follow her on Threads and Facebook, and I think Instagram. I would love CrimeCon to get her to speak. I love her. She is my spirit animal. She gives no fucks. She is who she is. She's a raw person. She is just who she is with no apologies. And we need more women like that to speak up and put their voice out there, not be afraid to challenge people's opinions or thoughts or the system. I'm reading her book now, and I can relate to it a lot, and how a woman in her position at the time, starting out as a journalist, and men just like looking down at her like she's not worthy of doing the things that she wants to do in the journalist world. And, she's out there being a voice. And Mandy, if you listen to my podcast, I have tagged you and stuff. I would love CrimeCon to get you there in Vegas. That would be absolutely amazing. I would love to meet you, and just message me. I think we'd be great friends. I love all the trolling you do to the people, to the haters, and you don't give up. You just get louder, and that's exactly the type of person I am. Like it just fuels the fire, and I love that. I love that you don't back down, and you don't monitor yourself, and that you don't stay silent to make other people comfortable. So thank you. Thank you for being a woman with a voice. If you're listening to this, Mandy, thank you. That's all I have to say about that. So without further ado, I would like to talk about Tiffany Valiante. "18-year-old athlete and recent high school graduate Tiffany Valiante vanished from her family's home in Mays Landing, New Jersey. Hours later, she was struck by a New Jersey transit train. Officials called it suicide. Her family has spent the last decade fighting to prove that it wasn't." Hey everyone, again, welcome back to True Crime with Tiff Klein, where we honor victims by name, tell their stories with heart, and refuse to let unanswered questions fade into silence. Today's episode is one that has stayed with me for a long time. It's a case that blends heartbreak, controversy, and a family's relentless fight for truth. This is the story of 18-year-old Tiffany Valiante, a vibrant, athletic woman from Mays Landing, New Jersey, whose life ended under circumstances that still don't make sense. Officials called it suicide. Her family has spent, like I said, nearly a decade fighting to prove that it wasn't. Who was Tiffany? Before we talk about the investigation, we need to talk about Tiffany, the person, not the headlines, not the theories, the girl that her family knew. Tiffany was 18, a standout volleyball player, tall, strong, athletic, a brunette, brown eyes. She had just graduated high school and earned a scholarship to Mercy College. She was excited about her future, genuinely excited, and friends described her as funny, loyal, and full of energy. Her family says she was kind of a person who lit up a room without trying. And the more you learn, the harder it's going to become to accept this official story. Let's go back to the night everything changed. And before we dive deeper, I want to talk about something that often gets overlooked. The parts of Tiffany's life that were complicated, messy, and deeply human. Because when a case becomes controversial, people tend to flatten the victim into a single version of themselves. But Tiffany was a teenager, a real one, with real struggles, real emotions, and real growing pains. We've all been there. And some of those details matter, not because they define her, but because they paint a fuller picture of what she was navigating in the months leading up to her death. A few months before she died, Tiffany got in trouble for taking a family member's debit card without permission. It wasn't a sophisticated crime. It wasn't planned. It was impulsive, the kind of mistake an 18-year-old makes when they're testing boundaries and trying to figure out who they are. Her family didn't treat it like a scandal, but they treated it like a problem to work through, a teachable moment, something to address, not something to shame her. Now, I could have swore it was a friend that said this, not family, so I have to double check that. Multiple sources said it was family, but then I did hear through others that it was a friend. So she got in trouble for taking someone's debit card without permission. I'm just going to say it that way. I don't like to put out, quote, facts that I'm not 100% sure on. So she took either a family member's or a friend's debit card without permission. And this is not something to shame her for. And that's important because it shows a family trying to support a teenager who's struggling, not a teenager who's spiraling out of control. There was also a moment when a teacher noticed bruises on Tiffany's arm and reported it, as they're required to. They're mandated reporters. I am too. The report didn't lead to any findings of abuse, but it did open the door to conversations at home, conversations about stress, about pressure, and about how Tiffany was coping with all of these things in the world of a teenager. Her family has always maintained that the bruises weren't from violence inside the home. But the fact that someone noticed them all tells us something. Tiffany was carrying more than she let on. Whether it was emotional stress, physical strain from sports, or something else entirely, we don't know. But it was enough for an adult to worry. And that matters. After the debit card incident and the bruise report, Tiffany and her mom started going to therapy together. Not because Tiffany was dangerous, not because she was unstable, but because they were trying to communicate better, trying to understand each other, trying to build a healthier relationship. And honestly, that's something I wish more families did. Now, they only went to therapy once, but there was no notice that there was anything wrong between them, just that they had a hard time communicating. Therapy wasn't a sign that Tiffany was suicidal. It was a sign that her family was invested in her future. They were trying to help her navigate the transition into adulthood, and they were trying to give her tools, not punishment. But again, she and her mother went to one therapy session and then they never went back. This is not the profile of a family ignoring warning signs. This is the profile of a family doing the work. Let's go back to the beginning. It was July 12th, 2015. Tiffany's graduated high school. They're having a big party across the street at her uncle's. Somebody accused her of stealing a debit card. She gets all out of sorts and apparently takes off walking. Now, this is where some of the things just don't make sense to the family, okay? According to the official narrative, Tiffany walked roughly 4 miles from her home to the train tracks. 4 miles in the dark, through thick woods, gravel, brush, and rough terrain. But here's the thing. Her shoes were found near the train tracks, and they were clean. No scuffs, no tears, no dirt embedded in the soles, and no signs they'd been worn on a long, punishing walk through rough terrain. And Tiffany herself, her feet didn't show the kind of injuries you'd expect from walking barefoot for miles in the dark. This isn't a small inconsistency. It's a major contradiction, because if she didn't walk there, then how did she get there? And I wanted to put this right up front because this will connect everything else. Again, Tiffany left her graduation party, apparently walked 4 miles from her house into rough terrain with no shoes, through gravel, through brush. Her shoes and a headband were found elsewhere, and she had no marks on her feet, okay? The one detail that always stood out to me and really, really stuck out to her family is Tiffany was afraid of the dark. Not mildly uncomfortable, like petrified. She didn't like walking outside alone at night. Yet everybody and officials say that she went walking 4 miles in the woods by herself in the dark. Not making sense here. She didn't like being in unfamiliar places without light, so she leaves her cell phone at home as well, or wherever it was, it could have gotten destroyed. She didn't have it on her, so she had no light, walking in the dark when she's petrified of the dark. She wasn't the kind of person who would wander miles through pitch black woods barefoot with no phone, no flashlight, and no sense of direction. The fear alone doesn't solve the case, but it does challenge the official narrative because she voluntarily walked into the darkness toward the train track she'd never been near before in the middle of the night. It doesn't align with who she was. Not emotionally, not behaviorally, not psychologically. So how do these details fit into the bigger picture? Okay. When you put all this together, the debit card incident, the bruises, the therapy, the fear of the dark, you don't get a picture of a girl who wanted to die. You get a picture of a girl who was trying to figure life out, a girl who was supported, a girl who was working through things with her family, and a girl who was planning for college, for volleyball on a scholarship, a girl working on her future. These details don't point to suicide. The day before she went missing, she was talking to friends about going to, I believe, an amusement park the next day. They were planning things for college. She was really excited about her future. All of this points towards a teenager in transition, one who deserved time, support, and safety. And that's why her family continues to fight, because they know who she was. They know and they know what she feared. They know what she was working toward, and they know what the story that they were handed doesn't match the daughter that they loved. She wasn't someone who hid her emotions. She wasn't someone who withdrew. She wasn't someone who talked about harming herself. She was planning for college, and she was making future-oriented decisions. And that's why, from the very beginning of this story, her family could not and still cannot accept the idea that she suddenly walked away from her home onto train tracks in the middle of the night and committed suicide. Here's the official story versus the family's story. They believe Tiffany was abducted, possibly assaulted and killed, and that her body was placed on the tracks as a staged suicide. They point to evidence they say was mishandled, ignored, or never collected at all. They point to inconsistencies in the timeline. They point to the fact that Tiffany was found far from home in an area that she had no reason to walk to, with no shoes on her feet, no cell phone, no light, in the dark when she is petrified of the dark. But they point to something else, something that has become central to their fight: recovered text messages. Messages that say they were never properly investigated. Messages that suggest Tiffany may have been targeted or threatened. Messages that raise serious questions about who she was with or who she may have encountered that night. Here's the evidence that raised the flags. Let's talk about the evidence, or in some cases, the lack of it. Her shoes were found far from her body, neatly placed, not torn, not scattered, and if she had walked miles barefoot through the woods and gravel, her feet should have been severely injured. They were not. Her phone disappeared. It was never recovered. Evidence wasn't collected, and items were left behind. The suicide determination came back shockingly fast, before a full investigation could have reasonably been completed. The family believes these text messages point to the potential threat or conflicts that were never explored. All of these have fueled their belief that Tiffany did not walk to those tracks that night alone, and she didn't end up there by choice. Another detail that's always bothered me with this investigation, and which bothered the family, is that her shoes and headband weren't scattered, torn, or tossed aside. They were neatly placed, carefully set down, side by side. That's not what you see when someone is running. That's not what you see when someone is panicked, and that's not what you see when someone is walking miles through the woods. It looks deliberate. It looks staged. It looks like someone else placed them there. Tiffany didn't have her cell phone. It was never recovered. No pings, no location, no data, no digital trail. So we're supposed to believe that she walked in the woods at night alone, barefoot, without the one thing every teenager, let's get serious, every person just about instinctively grabs when they leave the house, their cell phone. Her family says she would never go anywhere without her phone. And honestly, most of us wouldn't either. The absence of that phone is a big red flag to that family. It's a missing piece of the puzzle, silence where there should be evidence. But there's another layer to this case, one that's painful but necessary to talk about. Tiffany had recently come out as gay. Her family has raised the possibility that she may have been targeted, that some or someone may have reacted with anger, hostility, or violence, that her identity, something she was beginning to embrace, may have put her at risk. We don't know if that was a hate crime or not, but we do know this. When a young LGBTQ plus woman dies under suspicious circumstances, that possibility cannot be ignored. Not by investigators, not by the public, not by anyone seeking the truth. Kind of reminds me of Stephen Smith, part of the Murdaugh murders. Stephen Smith was found dead in the middle of a road in the Carolina, and he was exhumed, and the case has been opened back up because he was also in the LGBTQ plus community, and all of the evidence did not align with the reports. So there were the train conductor statements for Tiffany Valiante. One of the most debated parts of this case is what the train crew reported that night and how those reports evolved over time. And while the official documents aren't all publicly available, the broad strokes of their statements have been discussed for years. Let me clear that up. Have been changed for years. And here's what we know. Right after the incident, the train crew reported that a person, later identified as Tiffany, appeared suddenly on the tracks. The early characterization was that she jumped in front of the train, but the phrasing mattered. It shaped the entire investigation. It set the tone for the suicide ruling that came just hours later. But as time went on, the details began to shift. We saw something, but we're not sure what they said. In later statements, the certainty faded. The language softened, and instead of clear, deliberate jump, the description became more vague, more hesitant. Some accounts suggested the crew saw a figure or a shape on the tracks. Others suggested they didn't see Tiffany until the very last second. Some versions implied she was standing still, not jumping. Others suggested she may have been already on the tracks, not actively moving. These aren't small differences. These are fundamental changes in the narrative. It's important to remember this happened close to midnight. The area was pitch black. There were no streetlights, no ambient lighting, and just rural darkness. Now, I grew up in Ohio, in rural area. You turn the lights off in the house, you can see every star in the sky. I know what pitch black is in the middle of nowhere. So train crews rely on forward lights, but even those have limits. At high speed, visibility is measured in seconds, sometimes less. So when the crew's statements shifted from certainty to uncertainty, it raised a critical question. What did they actually see? And this is just as important. What did they think they saw? The initial, quote, "she jumped" narrative became the backbone of the suicide ruling. But when the statements softened, the investigation didn't. No one went back to reevaluate the scene. No one questioned whether the first impression was wrong. And no one asked whether Tiffany might have been placed on the tracks or already unconscious before the train arrived. The conductor's shifting accounts should have triggered deeper scrutiny. Instead, they were absorbed into the existing conclusion. When a case hinges on seconds of visibility, on a dark stretch of track, on a crew doing their best in an impossible situation, every word matters. Every change matters. Every uncertainty matters, because if Tiffany didn't jump, if she wasn't moving, if she was already on the tracks before the train arrived, then the entire foundation of the suicide ruling collapses. And that's why her family continues to fight. Now, this part's about the lawsuit and the new developments of the Tiffany Valiante case. In 2025, Tiffany's parents filed a major lawsuit alleging that their daughter was the victim of a hate crime murder not a suicide. They argue that state agencies withheld evidence, failed to investigate leads, and ignored signs of foul play. They're demanding transparency, they're demanding accountability, and they're demanding that Tiffany's case be reopened. They've even repurposed a $1,000 reward to help investigate persons of interest because they believe someone out there knows exactly what happened to their daughter. This isn't a family clinging to denial. This is a family who has spent years gathering evidence, hiring experts, and fighting institutions that they believe failed their daughter. There are questions in this case that simply cannot be ignored. Why was the suicide ruling made so quickly? Why wasn't Tiffany's phone recovered or traced? Why were key pieces of evidence left behind? Why were the recovered texts never fully investigated? How did she end up miles away, barefoot, in the dark? And why does every new piece of information seem to raise more questions than answers? These aren't small inconsistencies, they're major investigative gaps. And until they're addressed, Tiffany's family will continue to fight loudly, publicly, with unwavering determination. At the center of all of this is a young woman whose life mattered. Tiffany Valiante was loved, she had dreams, she had a future, and she deserved a full, thorough, unbiased investigation. Her family isn't asking for special treatment. They're asking for the truth. And as long as there are questions, real, legitimate questions, her story deserves to be told. If you have any information about the death of Tiffany Valiante of Mays Landing, New Jersey, please come forward. Her family deserves answers. Tiffany deserves justice. That story I have known about for a long time, and it reminds me, like I said earlier, it reminds me of the Stephen Smith case that they reopened that had to do with the Murdochs. And it also reminds me of Ellen Greenberg, who they ruled as a suicide as well, not once, but twice, when even Nancy Grace and Joseph Scott Morgan are fighting tooth and nail saying this was a homicide. Sometimes the evidence is right in front of your face, and all these families deserve answers. They deserve justice. They deserve the law to take them seriously and be an advocate, not a bully, not someone who shuts them down. Tiffany Valiante, like I said, deserves justice. She deserves a thorough investigation. Now, was this a hate crime? We don't know. But I don't think it was a suicide. It just doesn't match up with what her parents say. Why would she walk in the dark, barefoot, without a phone, and not have anything on the bottom of her feet to prove that she walked 4 miles through the rough terrain in the dark? Her shoes and headband were put aside somewhere else, as if they were just miraculously placed there, neatly and organized. And the training staff had changed their story multiple times. And why was this case immediately shut down as suicide? Nobody understands this. So her family should keep fighting, and I hope they get the answers. I do. This happened, 11 years ago? My math is right. I'm bad at math. I would love to see this one get changed to homicide or at least unknown. For right now, I don't think, I'm not a forensic scientist, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not a medical examiner, and I'm not a first responder, but I have common sense and I know how to look at clues. And I've dealt with enough shit in my life with people manipulating me and gaslighting me that I know how to connect pieces and put them together. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the evidence doesn't match up with the narrative. So I don't know if you guys have done any deep research on Tiffany Valiante, but there is an episode on the newer Unsolved Mysteries. I think that's where I heard of this case a long time ago. But again, I've seen it on Kendall Ray's and her husband's Mile Higher podcast. I've seen a bunch of YouTube videos about it. There's one called Everytown. The guy tells the story very well, but there's a lot. And this is like Stephen Smith and Ellen Greenberg, and all three of them need complete justice and thorough investigations. And as long as we keep talking about it, hopefully something will happen. And I hope that gets changed for the family. But another news, I can't wait for CrimeCon in Vegas. That's in May. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys. I cannot wait. I can't wait till they start announcing the guests. It's only 4 months. It's only 4 months away now. I remember booking it in September, being like, "Oh my God, it's so far away," and now I'm like, "Oh shit, I better book my flight soon." I'm looking forward to it. I'm dragging my mom, maybe my dad, and we'll see. But yeah, I got some podcast interviews lined up and some guests coming on my show that I'm excited to share with you. One of them is Danny After Dark. She just had me on her show, so she'll be my first guest, and I have a list growing after her. But yeah, I haven't finished any new books lately. Holidays really threw in a wrench, so I'm currently reading Mandy Matney's book, The Bloodstain on Their Hands, about the Murdoch, and her story with it all. It's pretty good so far, but like I said earlier, she reminds me a lot of myself, and I just love her unapologetically herself posts. I just absolutely I love it. So, yeah, thanks for listening. And like I said, I'm going to try to put one out every week. I'm trying my best. If I can do 2 a week, I'm going to try my best. And then we're going to start having some guests on the show because I know you guys don't want to listen to me for 30 to 60 minutes straight. But if you do, I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you who give me the time. I just got my stats back from Buzzsprout that hosts my podcast. And for some reason, I have the most listeners from Chicago. So Chicago, thanks for tuning in. I hit 472 cities and 25 countries, US being the number one country, but Chicago being the number one city, followed with Philadelphia and then Sydney, Australia, and Canada. It's really interesting. So thank you all. And I've only flown into Chicago, so I've never really been, but when I landed, I just went, "Duh, Bears." I'm a big Saturday Night Live fan, so it always reminds me of the Bears. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, Chicago. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and thanks for all your support. I really do appreciate it, guys, and I'm having fun doing this. And again, this is True Crime with Tiff Klein. I'll see you next time. And until then, stay safe, stay aware, and keep fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. And we'll keep giving criminals the disrespect they deserve.